like to talk to parents of young children who are still young enough that they still believe in Santa Claus. And I'm here with some symbols of the Christmas season, which I found difficult to reconcile when my own children were young enough to believe in Santa Claus. You can see I have a very pretty wooden nativity set on one side of me and Santa Claus on the other. And when I was young, a young mother, I was having a little difficulty dealing with Santa Claus in my household because, I guess, difficulty in my heart. I gave in to all of the Santa Claus frenzy, but I was also bringing my children to church and wanting them to learn about the story of Jesus' birth, and I was really torn because I thought that Santa Claus and all of the traditions around Santa Claus were in direct opposition to the lessons and values of the Christmas story. I mean, Santa seemed to be encouraging my children to be a little bit greedy, to be thinking about themselves, and to be more selfish than loving and giving, which I thought was the point of the biblical story about Jesus. So I actually stumbled across this image that I'm sure you've seen in other places. I think this is a particularly pretty version of it, which pulls Santa together with the baby in the manger. And when I first saw this image, 20, 25 years ago, in the midst of my own dealing with my young children, I was a little repulsed by it because I thought Santa had nothing to do with Jesus. It was just sort of this cultural juggernaut that I had to deal with somehow and feel guilty about it, but not have been strong enough to tell my kids, no, you can't have Santa and presents from Santa and that sort of thing. So what I wanted to talk about today was what I've figured out kind of over the years as I've realized that part of my inability to reconcile Santa with the Christmas story was that I really wasn't clear about what the Christmas story was all about. And once I became very clear in my heart about what was going on at the nativity scene, what God was doing through Jesus' birth, I came to see that a lot of what Santa is about is actually an excellent living out of those values and that lesson of what God was doing. So I just wanted to talk to you about that because I think maybe I can ease some of the anxiety that some faithful Christian households feel, because a lot of times the more faithful you get, the more deeply into your Christian beliefs you get, the more you distance yourself from Santa Claus. And I've seen that. Lots of traditions go in that direction, but the more I was able to understand what my Christian faith was about, the more I embraced Santa Claus. So let's see if you can follow me there, and if that's helpful to you, that's great. So let's look at what this image means. What do we mean when we say that God was born in Bethlehem? It means that God came into the world and entered into human existence out of love. God so loved the world that God came into the world to bring us closer to Him. Okay, it's not something that we earned. It's not something that God did because God thought, well, look at how great you people have been. You're so fabulous. You've earned an audience with me. So I'm going to show up because you've earned the gift of my presence. Not at all. It's exactly the opposite. God came into the world not because we had earned God's presence, but because we were in so much need of God's presence. And in our need, God loved us. And God came into the world for our sake. So I want to relate that to Santa Claus, okay? It seems as if it might be that Santa Claus, with his naughty and nice list, represents the opposite of what I just described God doing. Because Santa keeps a list, and you only get gifts if you've been nice. If you've been naughty, boom, you're off the list. In fact, my mom used that to her advantage. When I was little, I would find onions in my stockings because we had them up the whole month of December. And if I was bad, I got an onion in my stocking. And it scared the living daylights out of me. And it made me think of Santa Claus as someone who was waiting to catch me in doing something bad. Not as someone jolly and happy and cheerful, but as someone who was like waiting to gloat and to catch me misbehaving. So I was smart enough, I guess, when I was young, that I knew that wasn't, when I was a young mom, that I didn't want to replicate that feeling with my own kids, so I never used the naughty nice list with them. And I realized as I got older that that naughty nice list does not fit well with Santa Claus at all. Santa Claus comes from this ancient legend of Saint Nicholas, or it's also represented in the story of Good King Wenceslas, which is a story that I love. And there's a beautiful book about that story as well, where the king sees a poor person going by his castle window, and he looks out and realizes he's cold and he needs food and he needs logs for his fire, and he just goes and brings it to him. Now, he doesn't ask, did this guy pay his taxes? Has he been good to his family? Would he vote for me in the next election? It was nothing like that. He saw need, he responded. And that's the spirit in which Santa Claus came into the popular imagination. So this naughty nice list is not about Santa at all, and it's certainly not about God. It's about, unfortunately, the way humans treat one another. We tend to want to give people things that they've deserved and that they've earned. We're nice to people who are nice to us. We give gifts to people who give gifts to us. Most gift giving at Christmas is gift exchanging, right? It's I give a gift, you give a gift back to me. And we try and keep it even, right? But Santa Claus, when you think about it, isn't in the business of gift exchanging. Santa's in the business of actually giving, not because you've earned it, and not because Santa thinks he's going to get something in return. In fact, there is no expectation on Santa's part that we can give back to him. Santa doesn't put a wish list together. And that's the next thing I want to talk about, is how actually what a good exercise it is for children to put together a wish list of things, of toys, of gifts that they want from Santa Claus. And I learned this idea from James Allison in the way he talks about prayer. Because prayer, in a sense, is our own wish list, right? That we put together and present to God. Now, what's interesting about that, and what James Allison points out, is that God already knows what's in our hearts and minds. I mean, we can't tell God something God doesn't know already, right? So what's the point of praying our prayers then? What's the point of saying them in our hearts and in our minds and vocalizing them in some way? Allison says that the point is to be honest with ourselves. That God may know what our secret desires are, but we don't. Because a lot of them we're ashamed of. We're embarrassed about them. James Allison calls them our smelly little desires, the things that we hide even from God. And that the point of prayer is to acknowledge those desires in ourselves so that we bring them out into the open, even desires that we think we wouldn't admit to other people, like maybe a desire to be famous or to win the lottery or to be a football player and you're, not in good shape. I mean, desires that don't make sense, right? And that maybe even desires to retaliate, to get revenge, to hurt someone who's hurt you, to get even. Those kinds of things that sort of fill up our heart, and we're ashamed of them. So when we put those out there for God, we're saying, yeah, God, I know you know this about me, and I think I've got to face it. Can you help me face this? What can I do about it? And when you lift those desires up into the open, you make room for God to shape those desires and for them to be reshaped and reformed according to God's desires. So what's going on when kids are making Christmas lists? They're being influenced by their friends, by advertising, even by their parents' desires for the things that are going to end up on that list. And kids are really, the little kids that I'm talking about, the ones that still believe in Santa Claus, they're still trying to figure out what their desires are. And they're trying on different desires for size to see how they fit. They're going to try on the desires that the advertisers tell them things that they want. They're going to try on desires that they see their parents wanting, electronic devices, or to have a new coat or a fancy car, or to be, something to elevate your prestige in the eyes of your friends and neighbors, that sort of thing. So they're going to pick up on those things and try them on for size. And then the best thing you can let them do is write all those desires down on a list. Because that's like praying. It's like being honest with God, or with Santa in this case, about what you want. Okay? And so one thing that I did when I was a mom was I would look at that list and try and judge it, right? I judged it, and I said, no, honey, you can't use a pony. Ponies it's a silly thing to want. And I would try and, shape the list, if you will, to fit what I thought they should want. And I'm going to say that was wrong, that I shouldn't have done that. Because certainly God doesn't do that. God doesn't say, I knew you wanted that, and it's an awful thing to want. I can't believe you admitted it. What an awful thing for you to want. If God did that, what would our reaction be? We would not be honest anymore with God, right? We would go back to hiding our desires. And that's not what's healthy for a good relationship with God. So when your kids show you that list, and remember, these are kids 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, their desires are as changeable as the wind. They'll wake up one day and want a pony, and the next day they'll want a giraffe, and the next day they'll want a rocket ship, and the next day they'll want a steamship. I mean, their desires are changeable. And that's okay, that's good, that's what's supposed to be happening. But what you don't want to do is stifle that process of them trying on desires and seeing what works, right? You want that to be an open, fluid process. And truthfully, the way they're going to learn about whether or not which desires are good for them and which aren't is to try them on and to see what happens, right? So I think it's important when we pray to God, we trust that God is going to take our prayer list, our wishes, our desires, and do what's right with them for us. And I think that when you look at your child's wish list, you need to think that in your role of Santa, you're going to take that list and do what's right for your child. And you don't have to discuss it with them at all. It's not about telling them that you know what's right for them. And it's also about you getting in touch with how that list intersects with your list. Sometimes you want so much to give your child what they want because you want them to be happy, you want them to think that you're a wonderful person and that they love you for your ability to give them things. you want to keep up with the Joneses. Everybody's getting their kid the latest, electronic whiz device that whatever the 4-year-olds have to have this year. I don't even know what it is. But you want to be that kind of parent that keeps up with what everyone else says is important for their children to have. And I think you need to be honest with yourself about that, and maybe pray to God about it too, and put those desires before God, so that you can respond to your child's wish list without judgment, with love, and with trust in your relationship with your child, and that your child is in that stage of life where figuring out what to want and how much to want something is hard work. Okay, I just did a blog on temper tantrums, which I think you might find interesting because it relates here to children trying on desires. So I hope you found that helpful in connecting the love of God as expressed in the Christmas story to the love of Santa Claus in the popular culture. And so when you're looking at images and representations of Santa in the movies, in books, and things with your children, TV shows, look for places where Santa's generosity and love is represented in a way that aligns with the Christmas story. And I guess want to conclude by reminding you of the joy that children feel on Christmas morning when they do receive their gifts, and that joy of receiving something that you didn't deserve, that you didn't earn, that's coming to you out of someone's love for you and generosity towards you, is the joy of the Christmas season. It's the response that we have when we realize that God came into the world for our sake, not because we deserved it, but because we are loved beyond our ability to understand. And when we can capture that spirit for our children and use Santa and the beautiful symbolism and image of Santa giving gifts out of his abundance and feeling joy because of it, I think that we can evoke for our children the true spirit of Christmas. So I hope this was helpful for you. I would love to hear ways in which you connect Santa Claus with the Christmas story. And I wish you all a very happy and joyful Christmas. Thanks for listening.